The air was dry and sharp on the ridgeline, high above a narrow Afghan valley that looked peaceful if you didn't know what to look for. Staff Sergeant Eliza North lay belly down behind her M2010 cheek, steady on the stock. Breath matched to the rhythm of the slope beneath her. Her scope swept slow across tree lines, rock cuts, and a meadow that seemed too open to be innocent. Below her, scattered across the valley floor, the SEAL team moved in formation, quiet and confident. They didn't look up. It was just after 2:30 p.m. when the command net cracked to life. Lieutenant Travis Kane's voice cut through, smooth and clipped. He was standing near a matte green truck, looking at a map like it owed him something. He didn't glance uphill when he said it. Let the real operators handle this. A few of the men chuckled, low and knowing. One shook his head like it was a joke they'd told before. Eliza didn't respond. She wasn't on their channel. Not really. She was attached to their task force, but not part of their tribe. Overwatch, support, a sniper from 10th Mountain Division. They didn't ask for and didn't think they needed. The kind of soldier people called quiet, as if that meant she had nothing to say. Her job wasn't to speak. It was to see. From where she lay, the valley opened like a lung. Pine trees formed loose perimeter walls. Dirt paths crossed like frayed shoelaces near a meadow too flat, too clean. She measured wind drift and slope angle in her head, checked glass for heat shimmer, and watched for shapes that didn't belong. The men down there had the tab and the trident. She had a rifle, a ridge, and silence. And that was enough. She grew up in the kind of place where the wind could change your whole day. A stretch of high Montana earth, rough-edged and wide open, with pine trees scattered like afterthoughts and the mountains always watching. Her grandfather lived there in a small cabin that smelled like tobacco and gun oil, a man with hands like worn leather and a voice that stayed soft, even when the world didn't. He had flown the A-10 back in Desert Storm. He didn't talk about it much. But every so often, when the sun hit just right and the porch was quiet, he'd tell her how close a pilot had to fly to save a life. That's where she first heard it. Stillness between heartbeats. That's where truth lives. She was 9 when he taught her to shoot. A battered .22 laid across a fence post. Milk jugs lined up like targets in a carnival game. He didn't raise his voice. He just showed her where to put her cheek, how to breathe with the land instead of against it, and how to feel the wind in her skin instead of looking for flags. It stuck with her. By the time she turned 18, she enlisted. 11 Bravo. Infantry. She wanted the hardest thing they had. During Ranger assessment, she tore her knee. She could have taped it up, pushed through, lied to pass, but she didn't. She took the long road instead. Months of rehab, boring details, quiet jobs. She volunteered for every marksmanship team, every pre-sniper rotation. She said yes to every paper target and cold morning without needing to prove anything to anyone but herself. Sniper school didn't come easy. Nothing had. But she earned her slot, not because she was fast or flashy, because she was patient. She listened. She learned. She stayed. These days, when the world got loud, when radios squawked and orders tangled with doubt, she went still, rifle in hand, heartbeat steady, the wind folding around her. And in that space, where breath met gravity and math made sense, the world quieted. And for Eliza North, that was enough. The SEALs moved through the valley like they owned it, confident, tight formation, rifles low but ready. Lieutenant Travis Kane walked at the front, scanning his map, his radio clipped and silent. It was just past 3 o'clock. The sun had started to lower, turning the air a shade cooler, the shadows longer. From the ridge above, Eliza North watched them through her scope, body pressed flat against broken rock and shale. The wind ticked across the side of her cheek. Constant. Just under 3 miles per hour. West to east. Something shifted. At first, it looked like nothing. Just a patch of grass moving against the breeze. But the movement wasn't natural. It snapped instead of rolled. Then came the glint. Faint. Low. One piece of metal where there shouldn't have been any. She tapped her mic. Calm. Direct. Recommend shifting 10 degrees west. You've got a shimmer in the open. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Kane answered with a clipped negative. Stay the course. Maintain overwatch. And then the world split open. The explosion was fast and violent. A white slap that turned the soft earth into flying teeth. The blast echoed against the rock walls like a second detonation. Dust punched upward, swallowing everything. The team below scattered, muscle memory kicking in where instinct froze. They dove behind rocks, tree stumps, a shallow ditch barely worth its name. Eliza didn't move. She didn't blink. Her rifle stayed locked in, scope already tracing the arc of muzzle flash in the tree line to the left. She adjusted elevation, dialed a half-mil hold for wind, and squeezed. The shot broke clean. The flash went out. She shifted again. Second target, deeper in, moving fast, trying to flank. She took a breath, felt the pause between heartbeats, and sent it. Silence returned, one corner at a time. A voice cracked over the net. Who's shooting? Brick answered, tone low and sure. Overwatch. Keep doing that. Eliza stayed quiet. She was already tracking again. Down in the valley. The team worked faster now, less confidence, more precision. Fear had burned off. They were in it, and they were still alive, because she was up here. The one they'd ignored, the one they didn't need. Until now. The PKM was setting up fast on the far ridge, low silhouette, bipod legs out, gunner adjusting his feed tray like he'd done it 100 times. Eliza tracked him through the glass, steady hands turning smooth on the dial. The range was 812 meters. Wind held steady at just under 4. Slight uphill angle. She logged it all in her head without breaking breath. She didn't aim for center mass. She didn't have to. She watched the belt feed sway as the shooter settled in behind the gun. She let out a slow breath, counted the rhythm in her chest, and touched the trigger. The shot cracked clean. The gun didn't fire. The round struck the belt just where it entered the receiver, jamming the feed with a sharp metallic jerk that sent the weapon kicking sideways. The gunner scrambled, confused, his hands smacking at the receiver like it had turned against him. Down in the valley, one of the SEALs caught it through his scope. You see that? That's a damn parlor trick. Eliza's voice came in flat. Not a trick, just math. She pivoted, adjusted 2 degrees east. A second formation had crept in behind cover, staged for an L-shaped ambush along the valley's edge. She recognized it immediately. Classic setup. Crossfire would have lit the SEALs from 2 sides. She called it. Shift 5 west. Pull cover hard left. Kill zone forming to your 12. Kane paused. Too long. Brick's voice came right after. Firm. Copy that. Adjusting. The team moved. The trap never closed. Eliza stayed silent after that. But Brick didn't. His update started to match her rhythm. Short. Clean. Measured. Santos. Youngest in the squad. Mirrored her breathing on the mic without knowing it. You could hear it in how his words slowed. Even Kane, bold and sharp minutes before, hesitated now. The way someone does when they've just realized the map they're holding isn't the only one that matters. No one said it out loud. They didn't have to. Respect had a sound, and in that valley, it started with silence. He appeared just after 4:15 p.m., standing on a narrow rock shelf that caught the last edge of the sun, a single silhouette, upright, still, not holding a weapon, Just a black case, rectangular, sealed tight, cradled in his arms like it held glass. From Eliza's position on the ridge, it didn't make sense. He was exposed, out of cover, and he didn't care. She adjusted focus, tightening the image in her scope. His posture was clean, shoulders level, stance balanced, not the fidgeting shuffle of an amateur, not the loose walk of a local scout. He didn't scan like someone searching. He scanned like someone who already knew. He tapped the side of the case, once, then again. Subtle, deliberate. No wasted motion. Through her headset, Brick's voice came in low. Think it's an intel kit? Maybe a signal relay? Santos offered another theory. Could be an IED controller. Looks old school. Kane cut through, brushing it off. Doesn't matter. One guy with a box doesn't change the mission. Eliza said nothing. Not yet. She kept watching. The figure didn't look toward the team. He looked past them, behind them, toward the road they'd come in on, then up the ridge. He stopped moving for 12 seconds, long enough for her to count, long enough for it to feel intentional. She noted the way he turned, not fast, just measured, like someone working through a checklist, like someone who understood geometry, lines of sight, timing. The case never left his grip. She couldn't see his face. The brim of a field cap blocked the top half, but the way he stood made her stomach tighten. This wasn't local. This wasn't random. It was the kind of calm that came from knowing you weren't going to be touched. Not yet. Eliza clicked her mic once, then spoke. Even, steady, adjust assumptions. We're not alone up here, and he doesn't want to stop us. Not yet. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Down below, Kane shifted but didn't reply. Brick's breath slowed. Santos went quiet. The man on the rock shelf turned, walked back into the shadow, and disappeared. And Eliza kept watching. The ground shifted beneath her boots as she climbed higher along the eastern ridge. Loose limestone cracked underfoot, brittle as frost-bitten bone. The night air wrapped around her, cool and still. Above, the stars laid a pale shimmer across the slope, the kind of light that showed everything and nothing at once. Eliza North moved with the silence of someone who had walked terrain like this before. She didn't rush. She placed each step like it mattered. When she reached the cut above the valley, she dropped into a low crawl. The edge opened just enough to give her a view of the switchbacks below. She settled into position, rifle resting on a bagged support, scope already sweeping. Wind moved slow across the ridge, barely worth adjusting for. Her breathing slowed to match. At 2:50 a.m., she saw them, tucked into a fold of shadow. 2 men at a hidden observation post. One tracked the valley through binoculars. The other whispered into a low-set radio, voice tight and clipped. The rhythm told her everything. One watching, one reporting. She waited, timed the shift in weight, the pause in breath. First shot. The spotter dropped. The second man turned too late. The second shot followed clean. She keyed the mic. OP East is blind. Green to move. Below, the SEALs fanned west, drawing attention. It was showmanship now, a lure with noise. Then they curled back toward the eastern cut, slipping through like a shadow past sleep. Eliza tracked them the whole way, scope sweeping the path ahead. That's when she saw it. A doorway cut into the mountain, angled stone, half swallowed by terrain. No guards, no movement, no heat, but a small node sat tucked beneath a broken slab of concrete. A sensor, passive. She called it out. Visual on hardened entrance. Recommend spoof. Do not touch the node. Santos moved with care. He didn't ask questions. He mirrored her instructions like second nature. Kane stayed silent. Brick gave the go. Eliza stayed on glass, watching the dark breathe. They didn't kick in the door. They didn't light the world up. They slipped through, unseen, unheard, and Eliza watched them disappear into the mountain, one by one. At 3:27 a.m., she saw him again. Eliza's scope locked onto the figure standing half-shrouded behind a jagged outcrop above the valley floor. The black case was strapped across his back now, and his left arm hung low, stiff. Blood darkened his sleeve. He was wounded, but it didn't slow him. His hand gestured twice, then again. Precise, clipped signals. Men moved in response. Volkov. She'd heard the name before. Rumor. Shadow. Dead. They said, not anymore. Below her. The team had just cleared the last room in the bunker. Rows of metal racks. Cylindrical vials packed in foam. Labels stenciled with Cyrillic warnings and a red biohazard symbol that hadn't seen daylight since the Cold War. Brick called it in. Kane's voice clipped out orders. Then everything cracked open. 3 trucks roared in from the northwest, engines howling. They skidded into a blocking formation, lights off, guns up. Muzzle flashes burst from elevated ground. The kill box closed. Eliza's reticle snapped to the first RPG. She took the shot before he leveled the tube. Down. Shifted left. A machine gun crew set up on a stone ledge. She dropped the gunner mid-swing. Then the loader. Then silence. She reset her scope. No panic. Just breath. Volkov was retreating now, half limping toward a narrow draw. The case bounced hard on his back. She tracked him. Centered mass. Let out breath. Squeezed. The round caught him high in the shoulder. He stumbled. The case flew. Hit the rocks and cracked open. Vials scattered, some rolling under the firelight like glass snakes. Voices shouted in Russian. Smoke bloomed. 2 men grabbed him, dragging his body as others grabbed the case. Then everything vanished behind a burst of dust and flame. Inside the bunker, the charges blew. Fire belched upward. Rock cracked. A tremor moved through the ridge like something exhaling its last breath. The team was safe. The sight was down. But the case wasn't destroyed, and he wasn't dead. Eliza watched the fire paint the valley orange. Then she blinked, long, slow. Her hands didn't shake, but her jaw tightened. He had walked into her scope and walked away. This wasn't just a mission anymore, and the ache sat there. Low, deep, quiet, just under her breath. The dust hadn't settled. Not really. Not outside the Tactical Operations Center. Not in her chest. It was just after 6:20 a.m. when Eliza sat alone on a folding crate near the edge of the tarmac. The early sun dull behind haze. The M2010 lay across her lap in pieces. Barrel, bolt, scope. Her fingers worked slow and clean. No rush. No wasted motion. The smell of hydraulic fluid hung in the air, mixing with grit and gun oil. Inside the TOC, voices rose, sharp and clipped. Kane was getting debriefed, or chewed out. Hard to tell. Brick's tone was steadier, calmer. He was trying to explain what happened on that ridge, what happened in the bunker, what would have happened without her. She didn't listen too hard. The rifle was what mattered now. The feel of carbon brushing off steel. The small clicks of tension returning to alignment. She wiped the chamber down, rethreaded the bolt, checked 0 on the optic. Steady hands. Always. The door opened behind her. Boots scuffed the concrete. Then stopped. Kane stood there, eyes tired, face drawn tight around the edges. For a moment, he didn't speak, just stood in her shadow. Then he brought his hand up, a salute, crisp, clean, no flourish, just truth. Eliza looked up, held his gaze for one beat, then nodded once. Brick came next, then Santos. No orders, no formation, just respect, one by one. No one said her name. No one had to. The last piece clicked into place on her rifle. She stood, slung it over her shoulder, and walked back toward the barracks. No medals, no speeches, no need. She hadn't asked for validation, but she got it anyway. And that changed everything. At 7:15 a.m., the sun broke over the Razorback Hills, casting long shadows across the wire perimeter of the forward operating base. Eliza sat alone on a concrete barrier near the edge of the compound, her boots planted firm in the gravel, uniform still dusted from the valley. She wasn't tired. Not really. But her eyes were fixed far beyond the walls, like they were tracing something only she could see. General Malcolm Thorne didn't announce himself. He just sat down beside her, quiet for a moment, the kind of silence that meant something. He told her the man with the black case wasn't just anyone. Volkov had a history deeper than the war they were in. Her grandfather, the one who taught her to shoot and listen for wind, had hunted him once, back when maps were made of paper and secrets were buried under false names. She didn't move, just listened. Let it settle. Then Thorne reached into his pocket and handed her a compass. Brass casing, worn smooth by years of use. She recognized it. Her grandfather's. The one he never let out of reach, even in sleep. She turned it over in her palm. It felt heavier. Now. Thorne showed her the trick. Baseplate unscrewed with a twist. Inside, tucked in a hollow groove, was a strip of microfilm. Old, nearly translucent. A layout, coordinates, Cyrillic notations. A place known only by one name, Hades' Cache. She didn't ask why it had stayed hidden. Some things waited for the right hands. The general didn't give orders. He just said the world was shifting again, and some trails could only be tracked by those who knew how to listen. He said she was built for this, not because of skill, because of blood, instinct, echo. Eliza looked down at the compass. Let her thumb trace the edge. Her grandfather's voice came back, not in words, but in rhythm. That stillness between heartbeats. The one that told her where to look before anyone else knew danger was there. She didn't answer right away, but her eyes had already found north. At 6:40 p.m., the light slipped behind the peaks, leaving the ridgeline bathed in deepening blue. Staff Sergeant Eliza North sat alone, rifle across her knees, boots dug into the thin dust of the outcrop. The valley below was quiet now. No crack of gunfire, no radio chatter, only stillness, wrapped in the long breath of mountain air. She looked toward the rock shelf where he once stood. Volkov, the ghost with the case. There was nothing there now. No figure, no signal. Just the wind brushing over stone and the space where something dangerous had passed through. Eliza didn't chase that shadow. She watched it go. She let her eyes soften. Not in weakness, but in knowing. That kind of knowing her grandfather had once spoken of. Leaning against the old fence on a Montana hillside. It's not always about what moves, he told her. Sometimes it's what holds still. Between breaths. Between heartbeats. That's where the truth waits. She thought about that now. Not as memory, but as compass. Her strength had never come from pulling the trigger. It came from knowing when not to, from waiting, watching, trusting silence over noise, discipline over impulse. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just sat with it all, the weight, the ache, the purpose. Let it pass through her like wind through dry grass. Then she stood, lifted the rifle, turned, without fanfare. The stars were just beginning to show, faint and scattered above the ridgeline. She walked down into the dark, unannounced, unsaluted. No need for farewell. And the voice of the story said this: courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a single breath held still before a shot, or a long silence after, when the world forgets, but the mountain remembers.